Well, Kirby Smart's not going to be on this list, but a lot of other coaches are. Let's go through it right now. CBS making their proclamation as it relates to who has the quote most pressure to win entering 2024. Georgia, of course, has won two of the last three national championships. Kirby Smart's one of three head coaches, if my math's not incorrect, to have a national championship in his pocket right now of active coaches, the other being Dabo Sweeney and Mac Brown at North Carolina. But these are the folks that CBS says have got to start getting it done. I'm going to start from the bottom and go up as if I'm Drake. First of all, talking about Deion Sanders at Colorado, and there's a lot of other ones. Let me just name the list here real quick. Deion at Colorado, James Franklin at Penn State, Dave Aranda at Baylor, Mario Cristobal at Miami, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, which is a very curious one, Lincoln Riley at SC, Billy Napier at Florida, and Ryan Day at Ohio State. I don't know which of these folks has the most pressure to win. I would say it's probably between Kalen DeBoer, Billy Napier, and Ryan Day for very different reasons in all cases. But, Dave Aranda at Baylor, I don't know what's going to happen there, but my expectation is that the Big 12 is just not that great, and Baylor will recover, and that will be something that's important that will have happen there. At Colorado, Deion, more than anything, they got out to such a hot start. There will be some issues there for Colorado as they also go to a new league. They will be facing Baylor in the Big 12. I don't know if they play one another, but they'll be in the same league. So I think for Deion, can he, they finished so poorly. But those are not the most interesting ones to me. I mean, I think if Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier don't win in major ways, they certainly could be let go. And I think Billy Napier is in the most trouble of anybody on this list. Florida is what should be a national power. They're not even close to that. So in terms of under the most pressure, singularly speaking, it's probably Billy Napier more than anybody. But there's a different group here too when you start talking about like Lincoln Riley. It's go time for him. James Franklin, it's past go time for James Franklin. In both cases, both those guys, I would say if they don't get into the playoff, and I think it's a better chance that they both miss than both get in, then there's going to be some trouble there. At SC, it's one thing. I'll talk about them in a second. Penn State, they've watched as Ohio State's played for a national championship since James Franklin's been there. They've watched as Michigan's won a national championship since James Franklin's been there. There's really no explanation nearly 10 years into this now why Penn State isn't as good as their peers in the Big Ten. And the only thing I can say is, well, it's probably the head coach, because it probably is the head coach. Because once you're 10 years into it, you've got a weekend in Michigan and you've got an Ohio State that's desperate. You don't have to win your league, and your league got better with the addition of Washington and certainly Oregon, but it's go time. The one who's the two guys I think that are in who the pressure from the fan base is going to be tremendous is Ryan Day at Ohio State as well as Kellen DeBoer at Alabama. They both have very different circumstances coming into the year. It's going to be tricky for Kalen DeBoer. Here's what CBS has to say about him. He says all DeBoer did at Washington was go 25-3 with a Pac-12 championship and a national championship appearance. And yet the first time Alabama loses at home, he will feel like the wrath of Bryant-Denny Stadium. That assumes that they lose at home. I don't necessarily know that they will. We'll see. I mean, they host Georgia at home. They host Auburn. That's off the top of my head. Let me see here. Yeah, why is this so hard? Why can't we have this year's schedule? CBS, we got to do a better job of like the 2012. I mean, you're a major network. It shouldn't be that, if Dawg Post has Alabama, Georgia's 2024 schedule, you should. with all the resources, Anyway, they host Georgia. They certainly could lose that game. That's I don't think they could lose to South Carolina. They host Missouri. They could lose that game. They host Auburn. So there's not a lot of games that Alabama has on their slate at home that they could lose, but there are a few. Anyway, such is the life of a premier college football program for replacing legend Nick Saban. The Crimson Tide lost several key players from the SEC championship team in the transfer portal, including 4 of the top 6 rated players. Getting back to title caliber may take time, and Alabama isn't known for patience. They're not known for patience now. But look, from the time Bear died to the time Nick Saban got there, it wasn't all bad for Alabama, but they won 1 national championship. And it was rough at times in between there. It just was. It wasn't always as rough as it was made out to be. That's for sure. But it was rough. And, Mike DeBoer, they had a string of 3 Mikes in a row that were just rough. And that's Alabama too. It's not all, hey, we're champions all the time, because it's not always been that way. No one's that way. So, Kalen DeBoer's got his own challenges. Ray Perkins replaced the Bear as my recollection. He went 32-15. He had 1 10-win season. They never won the SEC. They had 1 top 10 finish, and then of course he was replaced, I believe, by Bill Curry. And, Bill Curry actually did a really good job in Alabama. And then they fired him. They pushed him out the door. So he went 7-5, 9-3. They went to the Sugar Bowl, but they lost the wrong game. They lost to Auburn, and that was it for that. That was it for that. They lost to Auburn at Jordan-Hare, and that was it. And, and then they brought in They brought in Gene Stallings, who then won them a national championship. But from Gene Stallings on. So, you kind of get the point. It's not always been unbelievable, anywhere. It's just how it goes. Perkins left Bama to go coach in the NFL, but it was not unbelievable. But nonetheless. A lot of pressure for Kalen DeBoer. But then Ryan Day is the one that to me is very fascinating. Ryan Day should win a national championship at Ohio State. He just should. Now, will he? I don't know. It's a good question. It says, no one else in college football even comes close to the level of pressure that Ryan Day faces in 2024. This is from CBS. They said after a head rival Michigan won their first national championship in a long time. Day quickly flipped the page to assemble the best roster ever. That's what it's calling it. I don't know. There's some discussion about this from Urban Meyer. We'll talk about that in the future. Assemble his best roster ever. The Buckeyes landed the number 1 player in the transfer portal, which was Caleb Downs. In the high school, Jeremiah Smith. That's subjective. With senior quarterback Will Howard. He's the question mark to me. And a host of other contributors. In every way, Ryan Day's Buckeyes are title or bust. Perhaps more importantly, Ohio State needs to beat Michigan. Well, those two things are not mutually exclusive anymore. They weren't in 2022. But as you may recall, Georgia beat Ohio State after in the college football playoff semifinal after Ohio State got a second chance. I think he poorly coached the fourth quarter of the Peach Bowl, and I think against Georgia, and I think that probably cost them a national championship. I think the challenge for Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon is that there are other really good teams, and for Ohio State, Georgia's going to be problematic. The schedule at Ohio State is, not the end of the world, but it's not it's not like it used to be in the Big Ten either, because the Big Ten was a joke, and now you have Oregon coming in, so that doesn't help. So they've got games against like they're not going to lose to Michigan State. They're not going to lose to Iowa. These teams are just, they don't have the firepower. They got to go to Oregon. I don't think Nebraska's going to beat them. They got to go to Oregon. They got to go to Penn State. And then after that, they play Michigan at home. So it's not real tough. So it will probably come down to the Oregon game and the Michigan game, because they seem to have a much more grit than Penn State, much more firepower than Penn State. Penn State can't seem to score when they need to. And so Ohio State will be in the playoff. What would be a bad look for Ohio State is getting to the playoff and losing to somebody like Missouri the way that they did this past year. I think it was the Cotton Bowl. That would be red flags. That would be, we got a problem here. I don't know if that's what's going to happen. We'll see. But that's who CBS has as guys that have to quote have the quote most pressure to win entering 2024. Tell me what you think below.